And we're back with the pursuit of ownership. I have on a very special guest slash host with us today, our very own Matt Guarino. He's come on with me a little bit to talk about some topics that have come up in the pre-ownership underwaters that we've been doing recently. There's just a few topics that have come up frequently, and I kind of wanted to consult Matt on a few things. And he said, well, there's kind of a lot to be said for it. So why don't we do an episode? So how you doing, Matt?
I'm good, Tyler. Thanks for having me on. We were I was in the initial talks that started the show, and Richard mentioned the name, The Pursuit of Ownership. And somewhere along the line, I guess I just found out it's now Tyler's Pursuit of Ownership. So that's incredible.
That's the T. That's correct.
This is your show named for you.
Yeah, that's right. And I actually didn't have anything to do with that decision, which is something I'm proud of. But it's a good position to have. I'm very proud of it. Still happy to have Clay and Aaron on whenever they find it convenient, but they have a lot of things going on in their lives, and currently I don't have anything going on in my life, so it's quite convenient.
I'm more in your line there, and I hope everyone saw Tyler's mailer on the Share Praxis Facebook group, where he really broke down easily how he designed his beautiful mailer with even a QR code. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's correct.
Nice. Yeah, very beautiful. Got his fiance on there. I think I can get some good responses from that.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to take the exact same thing and just reword it a little bit and use it as a wedding invitation. And,
yeah, there you go. That's one step done.
Yeah, that was a process that I had really intended to do probably 6 to 8 months ago. And every time I would dip my toes into it, I would just think of a bunch of things that I wanted to do with it and make it more and more complicated. And finally, this whole quarantine thing kind of gave me sufficient time to just, do whatever I wanted to. And so I kind of went over and above. I don't know, as far as what kind of return on investment I'm going to see, if it's really going to be marginally better than like a typical mailer, but we'll see. It'll be interesting. I'm happy to, share my experiences.
I mean, I can say from my end, if I got that versus just a written letter, I mean, I'm definitely reaching out to that guy, even if I'm not ready to sell. So I want to hear about, just briefly before we go into the main part of the show, where are you in the process? Have you just mailed them out, and how's that working?
Right. So I just got the postage stamps in today from eBay. And so I'm finally going to be sitting down and actually writing down addresses today because I decided I wanted to handwrite those. I probably could have done it a lot faster, just typing them in or whatever and printing on the envelopes, but I wanted to kind of have like a personal touch. So I'm going to be handwriting those for the next few days. And I'll probably just kind of send them out in waves just as I get them done. If I wait until I've got 300 written down, it's just going to take forever. So I'll just kind of prioritize by the ones I'm most interested in, and
nice.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. So I expect to be seeing something within a month and a half, hopefully.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, this takes me back. I remember handwriting my own, sitting in the public library in Queens, just getting home from residency. Yeah, sweaty, just writing all these names. It was fun though. I enjoyed it. Yeah. It's a fun time. I like that stuff.
No, it's a lot more of a grind than I anticipated it being. But I think it's really cool when you sit back and you see all that you've done. Cause I also threw together like a resume and stuff and put together like all the CE that I've done and kind of my journey through dental school, and just to kind of reflect on that a little bit and think, you know what, I've kind of done something here, and to be a little bit proud of it and give myself some credit was kind of nice. So
how are you approaching next steps? Say a doctor contacts you by email, says wants to talk, you talk on the phone. Are you then meeting in person for a meal? Are you going to their office? Like, how do you think that's going to play out?
Well, that's kind of touchy, given the current situation.
True.
I'm going to have to sort of feel that out carefully. I don't want to come on too strong with, hey, let's do a social, gathering, and I'll take you out to dinner, and we'll do like a curbside pickup or something. So that's currently what it's looking like right now.
Maybe you can eat in a park bench or something, sit far apart.
It's just got to be a sufficiently sized bench. So I definitely want to talk to them on the phone and just sort of get to know them and, see how our interests align. I think that's really all I'd be interested in doing for now. And hopefully when things kind of start back up and people aren't so apprehensive about, gathering together, I think that would be my next step. And, just figuring out, getting some leads and getting more, personal with some of those people, and just sort of putting in that idea that there could be somebody ready to buy your practice. Cause I think that currently there's a lot of people that may have not even been thinking about selling their practice 2 months ago, and they may be in a very different headspace now. So just, incepting that idea, might have some advantages for me. So I don't want to come on too strong just yet.
Yeah, I went the different route. I came on too strong, and because I guess I didn't start that way. The first one I was talking to, I met in person, went to his office, really nice guy, like super, cool. Like could be my dad kind of figure. I was talking to him for several months, back and forth, good rapport. Finally got to the numbers, and like his production was good, but his overhead was way out of whack. And I was
Yeah.
pissed that I just spent 4 months building a relationship and I get the numbers and I'm like, fuck, like shit, this is awful. Sorry,
Right.
Richard.
Right. No.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, and then after that, I kind of went too far the other route where I was, hey, what's your numbers? Right off the bat.
Right.
There's definitely a
Right.
healthy middle ground in there.
Yeah, that's something I really think I need to kind of explore a little bit and figure out, what's because I mean, there's obviously a balance there. You don't really want to do one or the other. I mean, at the same time, I'm kind of looking at it like, I'm sending a lot of mailers to the people that are in the area that I want to be. And even if it's a no from them, even if they have no interest in it whatsoever, at least they kind of know me. They see my face. They see what I'm about. They see that I'm, kind of a go-getter. And if that's all I get out of it, that's fine. I mean, ultimately, I'm going to be sort of a pillar of that community. I mean, that's ideally what I want to do. So even if they're not interested in selling to me, I kind of want to focus on making at least a good impression and creating a decent, reputation for myself. So I don't want to spend too much time on opportunities that aren't really going to directly benefit me. But at the same time, there's still something to be said for, those good relationships you can set up locally. So
Of course. Yeah. I mean, they better want you on your team. Otherwise, going up against you is not going to be fun.
yeah, exactly. I know. I'm a shark in the water.
There we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we can go ahead and start getting into it. So in the past few underwater interviews we've been doing, we've had a lot of people come on. They'll sort of bring some practices up to us. And it seems like a lot of people are trying to set themselves up for a group practice, right? Which is typically, at least like 6 ops. Ideally, you're doing, 1.8 million plus. There's a few other things that, that we talked about before as the archetype of a group practice. But it's a little bit harder to find a practice that really fits in and checks those boxes. And what we're seeing a lot more of is practices that will have those 6 ops and they have other things that make them look like potentially group practices. But when you look at the numbers, when you see that, there's this owner being, particularly productive in that spot, it really looks a lot more like a profitable solo. And so there's this sort of new archetype of like a pseudo group, quasi solo, whatever you want to call it, practice that could potentially be grown into a group practice that may also be a pretty good route if that's what you're trying to do. And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about that and understand, what practices really have that kind of potential. Is there merit in looking for those practices? Should you just be waiting for the practices that are more ready to go group? So I want to kind of get some of your thoughts on that, Matt.
Can I give you my ideal practice?
No, please do. Yeah.
So I think this is totally my opinion. The best setup is you get an office that is kind of at a productive solo, but has the bones for the group. So we're talking 6+ ops, doing anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 million, but isn't like the practice you had with Nick, I believe his name was, where it's already 2 doctors. It's kind of like that's already in there. I kind of would rather a solo doc, maybe like a part-time associate, doing over 1 million, but with the bones, like capacity-wise, to grow into the group. That gives you 2 benefits. So you get in there, you can either keep a part-time associate or get rid of the associate, operate as solo. Now you have a nice big office. It's going to give you immediate cash flow. You're going to make a nice income for however long you want to operate as a solo. Then when you make the conscious decision, you want to go to a group because you want to reduce your clinical days. You want to, be more hands-off, work on the business more. You have that capacity already there, and you can invest in getting more patients, basically. I mean, as we know, that's the hardest part of growing into a group is the patient flow. It's the most expensive. It's the most, tricky as far as exactly what to do to get the ROI. But if that can be done, now you've had great income from the start, and you're building something that's, really sustainable long term, where you can cut your clinical days and, design your work however you like.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying there is that if you buy a practice that has the capacity to become a group, you still have an option at some point at which you want to transition it into that, and you can kind of straddle both of those possibilities and kind of be successful either way. Like you can perform as a profitable solo as long as you want, and when you want to sort of transition into reducing your clinical days, you can sort of grow it. You can add associates and such, and you have that option to do it. So you kind of have your cake and eat it too. Is that what I'm interpreting?
Yeah, because I mean, we all hear from George, and his practice is amazing. But
Yeah.
we forget that he is a unicorn. Like the way he was able to grow patient flow in his office in such a short amount of time is not normal. Like it
Right.
doesn't happen. One out of every 100 can do that. So
Yeah.
the rest of us, normaltons, simpletons, whatever you want to
Please.
call us, we got to take more traditional routes to getting there. So we have to
Sure.
understand that growing, he probably doubled his patient base in a year and a half, almost,
Yeah.
something like that. So like we need to do it more slowly, more sustainably. And one benefit of doing that, which George didn't do, is doing it the way I just described will allow you to keep your income high in the beginning. George was totally okay with pushing income away for
Hmm.
his start and not taking home much income, really going hard in marketing and
And growing it.
reducing his days pretty much right from the get go. So he was okay with that. That's not how I operate. So I wouldn't have been okay with that. But so there are advantages from going slowly, is what I'm saying.
Okay. And so you describe that as being your ideal path, right? The
Mm-hmm.
practice that you eventually grow. So yeah, so I mean you kind of between George and Matt, we kind of have our two paths there. You have the one where you sort of double down on growing it from the outset and defer that income that you would have because you're so sort of jet set on I'm going to build this group and do it as soon as I can. Whereas with you, Matt, you're kind of at this point where anywhere along your transition towards a group practice, you are already successful and having an income that you're very happy with.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think you and I kind of have the same goals. Like we're kind of a similar dentist in this way. Like
yeah, I think so.
we're a little more clinical than George. We enjoy implants and getting into
That's
bigger
safe.
cases.
Yeah.
So I right. So I like the path of like for you, and then I'm just kind of projecting onto you. You come in there at a bigger solo office. You
Hmm.
gain the trust of the patients for a year or two, and then you bring on associates and you do more of the high level dentistry that you enjoy doing, can cut down your clinical days, whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
and have that associate do more of the bread and butter stuff. And now you're growing into a different kind of group, kind of what George and you talked about with Nick, where it's going to be more profitable for you than it is for George. But you enjoy doing the dentistry, so you don't need to be the lazy dentist, working one day a
Yeah.
week. And you're going to come out far ahead clinic or financially.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So let's say someone's listening to this and that sounds great to them. And they say, you know what, I want to go the path of Matt and I want to pursue that sort of transition. So I mean, you already mentioned that's sort of ideal. You got your 6+ ops, you got all this production and stuff. What are some other aspects of that ideal practice that let you know that it's prime for growth? How do you know if something is prime for growth or it's maxed out? What's its potential to grow? What are you looking at? What kind of numbers?
I mean, it's definitely multifaceted. I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
demographics is at play. How quickly can you get new patients is impacted by how many dentists are in your area. Somewhat that can be overcome. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned the capacity. Obviously, you want to have more ops than are being used to be able to grow. Like the office I bought is 5 ops, but was only ever really using 3 at a time. So I knew I had physical space to grow. Um, what are they doing for marketing? Are they the typical retiring dentist who's not doing any marketing? Are they doing a bunch of marketing? How tapped out are those marketing efforts, and where are they putting them? What baskets are they doing most?
Yeah.
In print? Are they doing online? Like, how is that working? What is their current new patient flow? Is it at a level that say it's at 40 a month already? Well, there's not a ton of availability for growth beyond that. There is some, but most you'll see are probably like Nick's practice where it was under 10 a month.
Yeah.
So, just with that in mind, there is a theoretical lot of growth. I think I would definitely be if you're interested in getting a group practice within say a 5 years after you buy, I would want 2 hygienists. Like that would
Okay.
be a big deal for me. As someone who bought a practice with one, kind of like 1.5 at most, growing the patient flow is the hardest part. So if
Mhm.
that can be like if that is already there, that's the hardest part. So like Nick's practice, it's going to be a long time to grow that to a real actual group.
Right.
And like I said, not everyone can do it as quickly as George did.
So you mentioned that you want to have two hygienists, and that's something that George says a lot. I mean, his face just lights up whenever there's already two or three hygienists in there. Can you elaborate exactly what that means for practice if there's already two hygienists? What does that really break down to?
It means there's probably at least, I would say over 1,500 patients, probably more in the realm of 1800. I
Okay.
mean, just having just being able to check for two hygienists, even as a solo doctor, does wonders for your column. Like you
Okay.
won't struggle to fill your column if you
Yeah.
have two hygienists. Like
Right. So
unless
you're seeing more stuff. I mean, you're checking two columns, so naturally that's feeding your side of things, the doctor production side of things.
yeah. And
Okay.
I mean, George has completely converted me. I hate operating with one hygienist. A few months ago I switched to two full time, and I'm never going back, which is crazy when you look on Facebook now and this kind of like dentist first hygienist thing
Oh
we got
God.
going on. It's,
Oh.
quite entertaining, but very unfounded in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but I'm really surprised about some of the stuff I hear.
Yeah.
People saying that's like the least profitable thing we do, and I would gladly do my own hygiene and stuff. I'm like, you guys are talking crazy right now. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It's a wild world out there on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay. We don't have to go too far into
No.
that. Yeah. I wanna part ways with that. Okay. So how do I know? Let's say, actually, there was one thing you said that I meant to stop you on before. So you mentioned there are more ops than are being used, right? And one thing I see is you see these practices that aren't quite that they have excess capacity. But another thing I see sometimes is like a practice will have four ops, but it's plumbed for six. It's plumbed for seven. There's an adjacent building that you could buy out, or an adjacent dentist that's going to sell. That actually came up a couple interviews ago. And I could get more chairs later on. What's really a low hanging fruit? I mean, if an op is plumbed, does that mean I can just start throwing patients in there and hire a new hygienist and stuff? Like, what do I need to be looking for? How good of an opportunity is that really?
Yeah. So I would never look at a practice with four ops with just no space to do anything else. Like
Of
just,
course, yeah,
I mean, it can be done. It has been done, but why? Why do that? Why
yeah,
put yourself in that small space? So,
yeah,
with that being said, say you do looking at a practice with four ops, and the doctor's office is plumbed for the fifth or something. Obviously, that's going to be cheaper and easier for you to throw another chair in. It's just literally buying the chair and the equipment and the supplies. Expanding into a neighboring building. Now you're talking more of a build out kind of thing.
sure,
Again,
okay,
it's a decent expense. So if you found that four op practice that you do really like, at least make sure there's some ways to expand. And I'm a big personal office guy. Like I'm not getting rid of my office for anything. So
hmm,
if you're that way too, just know that and know that that's not going to be an option for you.
yeah,
Because I need the leather chair, put my feet up on the desk. Everyone leaves. I put on my music, and I need that. So,
okay, I understand.
but like just buy the bigger capacity. It's gonna make your life so much easier.
Yeah, I mean it's options, right?
Yeah, and I get it. It's tough. Those are tougher to find, which is why we push the off-market strategies to like be
Yeah,
able to find them because they are out there, but they're quicker, taken up by when they go through brokers, and you just got to do a little more legwork to find them on your own.
yeah. So should I just put 6+ ops on my mailer now? Write that in.
Yeah, five or less need not respond. Don't waste my time by responding.
I might have to. I might have to go ahead and do that little weed out. It'll probably save me a lot of time.
Yeah, it would. It
Um,
might piss a couple people off though.
that's for sure. So, okay. So let's say we are trying to grow this practice or add an hygienist, or we're trying to start utilizing one of those unused ops. How do I know when the practice is ready to do that? What sort of numbers am I looking at for that? And I know this is more of a, after you've already purchased the practice, but I think it's really important that we kind of have in mind what that transition looks like, what the first year or two looks like, for people to kind
Mhm.
of understand what they're getting into and make a choice about what they're looking for.
Sure. I mean, so this is just to kind of back up. This is almost impossible without practice by numbers or similar software. Like you
Yeah,
need to have
of
this
course.
to figure this out. So assuming you do, where do our patient flows come from? Two buckets: new patients, current patients. First,
Yeah.
new patients. How many new patients are we getting a month? Is that something that can be expanded? That's one way. That's one place you look. So if you deem that you're underproducing in the new patient realm, that's one bucket. The other bucket, a bigger one, is your current patients. So how are you doing in your recall current percentage? Are you like most offices where you're in the mid 50s, 50%, 55%?
Yeah.
That's a pool of patients that you now have an opportunity for. You have 300, 400, patients not on recall or overdue for recall that you can draw from. So if those numbers are aligned, if you're underperforming in both of those, you can easily or somewhat easily, add patients through those. Now, if you're tapped out on those, if you're well above 60% in your recall percentage, you're getting towards 70. If you're already getting 40, 50 new patients a month and you're looking to add capacity, you just kind of have to gauge it that way. But those are the buckets you kind of look in to see, how can I add more patients for another hygienist or another chair?
Yeah. So I kind of have a feeling that in some of the practices I'm going to be looking at, I'm not going to be able to just ask right off the bat, hey, do you got a PBN snapshot?
I'm going to guess they don't.
Yeah. So let's say I'm in talks with someone who could potentially be selling their practice and I want to analyze such things. How do you kind of break the ice and go about getting that sort of information if that's at all possible? How would you approach that?
I mean, you're gonna get active patient numbers. They're gonna be way off. I think
Yeah.
the first active patient number I got was over 3,000. Like I got in there, and when I finally got PBN, like right in my first couple months, it was like 1,300, 1,200. It was minuscule compared to what I was said. But I kind of knew that going into it. I was like, he's a solo doc. I know he's not seeing 3,000 patients.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Like it is not like super an exact science. I mean, you got to lean on the reports you get from their softwares. But you kind of you can kind of estimate based on how many hygiene days they have. Like, and you're going to be able to see their schedules too. So you're going to be able to kind of do some simple math to know kind of within a pretty accurate range how many active patients they actually have.
So can you elaborate a little bit on that math as far as looking at hygiene days and trying to figure out what the actual active patient count is? And also, if you wouldn't mind, define what an active patient is for you.
I think anyone, I kind of go with what PBN does. Anyone in the last 18 months is an active. Right. You can just say, you can see, they're going to tell you the days each hygienist works. So you can just count the days of the week and say you got, 8 hygiene days a day. Figure the doctor's not going to have them sitting around all day. So assume they're going to be decently full. Like, we preach being at above capacity when adding on a new hygienist, and that's okay. We're fine with half-filled hygiene slots. Dentists in general are not okay with that, at all. So just kind of assume that they got them filled.
Okay.
And kind of do some simple math that way. And you should come up with a pretty close number. And you can just kind of based on the hours, based on the hygienist, based on how many doctors there are, you can kind of figure it out. And based on the actual patient number they give you.
Okay. All right. That's fair. So there is a little bit of math to be done. So I'm not the most math affluent person. So
yeah,
that's why I asked these questions. And I figured, out there.
I'm an estimator. George probably has some formula where I could figure it out more accurate than I. But come on, I mean, you just estimate. Whatever. It's not that big. Like you'll figure out what kind of practice it is just by looking at numbers.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so that's good stuff. So I'm thinking about other aspects of growing the practice. I mean, you did mention demographics briefly. So if I'm looking at practice and I'm really hoping that this thing needs to grow, do I need to go on Google Maps and look at the street view and see what kind of street visibility I have? I mean, do I need to order a demographics report or something like that? I mean, usually when we talk about demographics, a lot of times we're talking in terms of startups, like we're trying to, literally build a practice from 0 to 1. So how important is that kind of stuff? I mean, you kind of have a track record of how that practice performs with its existing visibility just by looking at the new patient flow, comparing that against marketing. So I mean, do those sorts of things matter? Are you looking on Google? I mean, how are you sort of assessing how marketable a practice already is and what's left to be done?
Yeah. More information wouldn't hurt you. So getting a dentographics report, totally fine. I'm cheap. So when I was an associate, there's no way I was spending $500 on a dentographics report. Just wasn't doing it. So I did. I mean, I went to Google. I Googled the dentists in the town, saw how many were, looked at Wikipedia for the population, kind of did a rough, dentist population ratio just to make sure it wasn't like crazy low. That's pretty much all I'm looking for. If the practice numbers are good, which is the one I was looking at as long as it wasn't like 1 to 600 or something crazy. And even if it was, I wouldn't have cared that much. So I did a very half-assed look into demographics. But what I looked in more is how much marketing were they doing? Specifically, like actually how much are they spending on marketing a year? And what is their online presence like? A lot of these offices you'll find have such a minimal online presence. It's just like maybe a Google business page, probably not a Yelp page or anything like that, and crappy website, hasn't been updated in years. Like those are all opportunities. Like you can, get Swell, get a new website, um, start marketing for Google Ads, improve the SEO. Like that can all be improved with any half decent marketing company. So I kind of knew for myself that I had those avenues where I was able to kind of immediately improve on it and kind of just bring the practice to the new age. Us
Yeah.
being younger, and it's kind of basic stuff for us, but for older dentists, they just didn't care. Um,
Yeah.
so I look at all that. I like look for seeds of opportunity, and the numbers will tell you where they are.
Right, right. So what's kind of like a high marketing budget if I'm looking at sort of a breakdown? If I see it's 5% into marketing, is that something that you think is kind of high? I mean, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, it's just not what comes up with Praxis for Sale. I mean, I'm sure it
Okay.
does, but like the more normal is well underspending marketing, because I mean, I feel like I'm the dentist generalization guy. Like I call me Dr.
Hmm.
Nacho or something. And I don't want to be that, but I slip into it. So anyways, most dentists, they don't spend money on marketing because they want to take home more in their pocket. Like if you have a healthy practice,
Yeah.
you just want to put it in your pocket, especially if you've been doing it for 35 years. So
Yeah.
most of the ones you get are going to be underspending on marketing.
Yeah.
And they're going to be, 1%, maybe less.
Okay.
If you find one that's 5%, then yeah, they're investing kind of as they should in marketing. You should be around 5%. And
Okay.
I think I'm usually under that. I'm probably usually like 4, but that's kind of where a practice should be if they want to grow. If you get one that's lower, then you know that the owner doctor is okay with them not growing.
Okay. Yeah. And you actually touched on something about, younger dentists that are coming in. I think that even if you find a practice that is spending a decent amount of money on marketing, it's not just like you pour money into something and it spits patients out. I mean, maybe these efforts are actually fruitful. Maybe they're not. Maybe it's just kind of a leaky bucket. I doubt that a lot of them are entertaining some of these, third party marketing companies that have come about that give you, great SEO optimization and really good return on investment. They might just be putting a whole lot of money in the yellow pages for all you know. So, I mean, I think that your bit about looking them up on Google, seeing about their visibility, seeing their website, seeing what, how easy it is to find this practice is sort of a more qualitative sense of how well this practice is marketing. And if it's harder for you to find them, if they're not quite as visible on a lot of these things, if they don't have a lot of reviews, then that should kind of give you a sense that there is room to grow. There's a lot more room to improve. George sent us a screenshot, and actually you did it too, Matt, of where his practice was sitting when you Googled dentists in his area, and he's just like number one, got
Mm-hmm.
so many reviews, like so many
Mm-hmm.
5-star reviews, and I know it wasn't like that to begin with because I saw his practice, shortly before he bought it. And so I think even if that practice were marketing at the time and putting a decent amount of money into it, it obviously wasn't putting it in things that actually had as high of a return on investment as what he's currently doing. So it's maybe not as simple as looking at a number and saying, "Oh, that's too much."
Mm-hmm.
You have to get a little bit more granular than that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all reputation. Like, what is your online reputation? What is your reputation by word of mouth in the community? If you can win those two, you're going to get healthy new patients. Like, people are going to Google dentists, look at reviews. Like I would say everyone 70 or under does when they're finding food, finding anything. Like you look up online, you can't
Yeah,
help but notice who has the most reviews. Maybe you click on them. Maybe you just take the word for it based on the number. And then kind of more with the older population, which a lot of us are. That's kind of our main, at least for me, that's my main patient base is probably
yeah,
60 and over.
definitely
Those are the ones who have disposable income, who have dental needs.
more
So
healthcare
that's a
costs. Yeah,
super important part of the your patients. So for them, it's word of mouth. So it's
right.
providing excellent service. It's asking for reviews. It's giving or asking for referrals, giving them incentives for referrals. Like
Yeah,
your reputation is the most important thing, especially if you're going to be operating in a town, rural, like any kind of community that's not maybe a big city. That's what matters, and you got to guard that as best you can.
okay. Would you feel perturbed at all by a practice that didn't have great reviews? Like it looked good. Like this is kind of theoretical.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even think I've
But
seen
this,
this.
I'm sure this comes up.
Yeah, like what if they do have some bad reviews? What if they have had some bad publicity? I mean, does that affect your assessment of things at all?
It would. I would just change the name and change the Google Business page as soon as I can. Like get
Really?
that out of there. But no, it would. like it does for anything else I buy. Dental practice is
Sure.
not excluded from this. Like I read reviews and I don't take one negative review and make it mean everything. But if there's a trend, that's probably not by accident. That's probably because something's wrong internally. So I would
Yeah.
probably do some digging as far as, is it a staff member? Is it, they're it's usually related to money. Like
Okay.
any most bad reviews are somewhat related to money and a
Yeah.
bad way it was handled. So I would kind of try to see if I could see a trend and find out what's going on. I know the place I used to associate with in Queens had a lot of bad reviews because a little bit pushy on the selling side of
Okay.
things,
Yeah.
and that was kind of taken. Some people took that poorly. I would say
Okay.
that. Put it
Yeah.
lightly.
Enough said. Enough said. Okay. So I want to kind of broach a different subject altogether. So when you're looking at these practices that have the bones of a group practice, but they're actually producing 1 to 1.5, I think we were saying earlier. Um, I would assume that financing practices like that is probably easier than it would be for a larger group. Is that a safe thing to say?
Probably.
Probably.
Banks are looking at basically two things: cash flow, like how much
Mhm.
does the practice produce a year in income that's take home. Like if that
Yeah.
number is healthy, they're going to loan that. They're going to give the money to most anyone. Now you need to, the other thing they're looking at is obviously the buyer. Do you
Yeah.
have some liquidity, or can you prove somehow that you can produce dentistry? And like for
Okay.
me, that was a big part of that was like residency production. I was able to show that I did different procedures. Like it doesn't have to be so crazy as people think. Oh, I need to produce an X amount a month to show a bank. Not really. Like it's all a story. They're just like they're compiling a story that they can give to their underwriters that they can sell them on. So
Yeah.
they write the loan, and they know dentists are pretty sure bet as far as loans.
Okay.
So if you got the cash flowing practice and you can show that you're a responsible human, you have savings, and you can produce dentistry, they're going to loan it to you. Obviously, a higher loan is a little harder.
It's a little more
You
sensible.
know, yeah. I mean, it's a good discussion because we're getting a lot of new grads who want to be owners, and
Yep.
they're really intrigued by this group practice model, which obviously leads to higher sale prices. So how do you kind of dance that line? Um, you just got to try. I mean, don't write something off because you don't think you can get a loan. At least like ask.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, I think somewhat obviously the reason I ask is, I it doesn't look like I'm going to be coming out with much of a GPR resume unless something changes pretty soon.
Ah, damn, that's too bad. I thought you were going to be the one that did it.
We'll see. We'll see. The possibility is still there, but there are plenty of people that have come that have emailed the sptheinterns at gmail.com. Write that down. Or they've sent me messages on Facebook, which people are more than welcome to do.
Writing that
And
down right now.
right, thank you.
Mm.
And they've kind of asked me about clinical preparedness because a lot of people have been inspired, like I was in the very beginning, to purchase the practice right out of school.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not want them to see my productivity in school because I've done about 10 crowns in, I don't know, the past like 8 months. So
Well,
that's not going to do me too many favors.
that's the kind of misconception. It's not. They're not looking like they know school and residency are your hands are tied in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So the way they use it and the way they use it for me is that you can do different procedures. Like you can show I've done this many molar root canals. I've done, I place implants. I've done surgical extractions. Like if you just show you've done those procedures somewhat regularity, they're not like, for residency in school, they're not looking to see how much you did. They just want to see
Right.
if you
Okay.
did it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can maybe make an argument that, oh, I've taken a few implant CE courses and I know what to do, even though maybe I haven't
Yeah.
gotten so many reps with it.
It's like, story. This is a story.
Yeah.
We're in the selling business. We should know how to do this by now.
I guess on myself. Okay, very well. As long as they don't know how to get into Axiom and actually like run a report on my productivity, I think I'll be okay. I can probably I can upsell myself, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I want to jump back and talk about a kind of bigger, more basic topic. So,
Sure.
like, the reason people are interested in group practices, like,
Yes.
can you give me some common themes as far as like why that's getting brought up so much other than just hearing George talk about it ad nauseum?
Well, I think that what it offers is options and freedom. People like the idea that they're not um, losing opportunities along the way. And it's like if you kind of put yourself into the position of like a productive solo, let's say you're in a practice that only has 4 ops or maybe 3 or 4 ops, like
Mm-hmm.
the amount of things that you're able to do with that practice alone gets cut substantially as soon as you step into that practice. And I think with the group practice model, I mean, we talk about George being a lazy dentist, but nothing about his model demands that he be a lazy dentist. That's a choice of his. If
Right.
he just woke up one day and said, you know what, I'm going to go and be an implantologist, which is a fun word. I think
That's a fun
implantodontist.
word.
I think implantodonist would be more appropriate. I don't know how many people are actually doing research in implants. They call themselves implantologists, but let's say he wants to go in and he wants to work every single day and just do implants, or he just wants to do endo, or he just wants to do digital smile design and draw on his iPad all day long. Like he can do that, like he has the opportunity to do that, and still the business works for him. And I think we actually had someone write into the show that said that pursuing the group practice is essentially pursuing a true business, wherein it's a business that functions without you. It's not being built on your back all the time, and it's not dependent on you. If something were to happen to you, let's say you're 35 and your back is killing you, and you're like, you know what, I love dentistry, I want to be a part of it, but it can't rely on me anymore. You have the option to sort of transition away from that. You can be as much a part of it as you want to be at any given time, and you can transition away from it. You can come back. You're building a foundation that preserves those options for you. And that's why I kind of feel strongly about, not kind of feel strongly, I feel strongly about
Mhm.
establishing that sort of foundation and keeping my options as open as I can, no matter how clear my vision gets, no matter how sure I get about how much I want to practice. I want those options. I don't want to be able to have, freedom and autonomy to do something different if I want to, change directions a little bit down the road. That's kind of how I feel about group practice.
Mhm.
Beyond that, beyond just, career options, I just like the idea of working in a group practice. I like being a leader. I like the idea of having a larger team. I like the idea of having associates working uh, underneath me, but also with me. There's just a lot of things that when I see myself in that position, it just feels right. It just feels like who I want to be. So that's just kind of what attracts me to it personally.
Well, that was a nice sell.
Not bad, right?
Yeah, that was good. I could see you pitching that on one of your meetings with one of your sellers and being
Yeah.
very inspired by it.
Yeah. I should have
Um,
recorded it.
don't worry, we are. Uh, yeah, I get it. I get all that. I really do. I guess I wasn't wired that way. Like I was more like I just wanted to be the guy. Like
Yeah.
it was just me at the end of the day. My
Right.
decision, I guess this is my little 8-year-old coming out. I want it to be my way. uh, that's probably really what
Yeah.
started this like drive to just like
Yeah.
be the guy. Kind of going at it like a prove it to myself kind of way, which I
Right.
don't think is a good way to go about many things. It's something I've learned about myself through coaching.
Okay.
That I just want to prove that I could do it. Like I'm smart. I know how to do it. I can be the guy.
Yeah.
But that was the motivator for me. And now that I've kind of started to make these realizations and kind of choose differently, like noticing that's still in me, but choosing based on a higher level of myself that I like to operate from,
Yeah.
um, is why I'm trying to grow the patient base now into more of the
Right.
more of the pseudo group. I'm never going to be a full on
Okay.
big group, but I'm kind of more in the pseudo realm.
Yeah. Well, you're still the guy.
Oh, thanks. My
If you,
8-year-old thanks you and
if
says,
you,
I knew it. I
if you
knew it all
needed
along.
that kind of affirmation. Um,
Don't feed into it.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think another thing that kind of comes along with being the guy and being the solo is a lot of responsibility. I mean, the buck is always going to stop with you, clinically speaking as well. So, I mean, it's just a lot. It's a bigger ask of yourself, and I still think that's a valid way that people can go. But I just personally think that people should, pursue finding larger practices that give you an option, to be the guy, but also have the opportunity to step back if, I mean, you can't really predict who you're going to be in 10 years, right? Like that's impossible to do. Like if you asked me who I was going to be in 10 years, I don't know, probably I thought I was going to be Elon Musk or something like that. Like, you know, and I learned from that. So, I just think it's important to preserve your options. I mean, there might be, a more profitable way of, finding smaller practices and being this sort of boutique practice that does a bunch of like really high dollar procedures, and it's all you, and you got it for really cheap. And, maybe that makes a lot of sense with your vision, but, I still feel like you're limiting yourself in a way. You can't really change direction as easily down the road. I could probably be swayed from that, but that's just my assessment.
Yeah. And I think I would encourage the listeners to do what Tyler has done, which is come up with his why and his vision, like in his own words. It's not just like, I like the idea of it. It's like, what does that model bring me? What strengths of mine really come out when I'm a leader of a big team? I'm in a group practice, like
Yeah.
really ironing out that for yourselves. So you're not going into it because it worked well for someone else, or you like the idea of it, or like you really feel strongly about it because it's based on your values and your own principles.
Yeah, and I think you also have to think in terms of, what sorts of problems you like to deal with, like personally dealing
You
with
sound
people.
like George right now.
Yeah. Well,
But go on. It's a good point.
yeah. So we've actually read a book. I think you may have read it as well, Matt. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that I'm totally forgetting. I wrote some notes on. I might need to review it. But one of the principles it has is, think about your life planning in terms of the problems you're willing to deal with, and what are willing to have on a day-to-day basis, because sometimes the problems are actually what make things exciting for you. Right. It's kind of what keeps you going to work every day. It's the reason my mom won't retire, even though she was supposed to like 2 years ago. Like she still deals with stuff. She works at a nursing home, and like, people come to her with all these problems, and she says she hates it, but I think she actually loves it.
Yeah.
There's certain problems that you deal with, when you have like a larger team, that some people may really, that they may do it for them. That floats their boat. They love managing that and leading people, and they love the challenges associated with it. I believe George does. And then there's other people that prefer perhaps a more clinical challenge. Maybe they just want to put themselves in really difficult spots doing, full mouth rehab and like all these really ambitious, specialty procedures, because they want to be like the super GP, and they're not really so concerned about like managing a lot of people, and that just like irks them. So it's a very big difference in terms of the problems that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And, that's a question that you have to ask yourself, and all the experiences you've had in your life inform that, I think. And so it's really important to evaluate it in terms of what sort of things you're able to deal with.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of that can be experienced in your associate job. Like you'll get to know the problems you're okay with and the ones you're not. So the ones who are going straight out of school and doing it, I commend all of you, because it's a big leap of faith. Where I feel like when you're working right out of school is when you kind of determine some of this stuff. If you're not such a thought leader like Tyler here, who just spends his nights and weekends thinking about this stuff
and annoying you guys within the group.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually want to talk about that a little bit, because early on in my journey, and really up until fairly recently, I was not afraid to affirm to myself and other people that I wanted to purchase a practice right out of school. Like that's what I said. And I got almost a reputation for it. People just assumed that I was going to buy a practice right out of school. And there were some thought processes and some realizations that came along the way that kind of made me realize that it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to be an associate for a little while. And it took some time for me to kind of be more comfortable with that. And it's something that I talked to Clay a good bit about, because, before he had, graduated and gone off in his opportunity, I assumed that we were all going to try and buy a practice right out of school. And what he ended up doing is he ended up associating. He's at a very large practice that he is looking to purchase pretty soon. And he's kind of had this, time where he's able to be in the real world of private practice dentistry. He's able to encounter the daily problems. It's not just something he's reading in a book or learning in CE. This is literally what he goes into work to do. And he's learning in real time. He's getting his speed up. He's getting more comfortable working with the team. He's sort of getting more of a leadership role within that practice, and things are going to be like really oiled up for him when that time eventually comes along. And I kind of realized that for me, that actually felt a lot more comfortable, and that some of the things that were leading me towards trying to purchase right out of school were somewhat ego driven. It was like, oh, I'm just going to buy right out of school because these unicorns of dentistry like George have kind of led me to believe that that's how you do it. You just have to own as soon as possible. And I actually had someone message me literally like yesterday that said exactly that. I just know I want to own as soon as possible, and that's the best thing for me. And I kind of want to challenge that view a little bit. Can you speak on that some? Because I know, I mean, obviously you did a GPR and you had tons of clinical reps going into it, but I would assume that that may have made some things easier for you.
It definitely did. No, I was kind of the same way. Like in New York, you have to do residency. So, I was um, from the beginning of residency, I was trying to buy a practice because I did not want to work before I bought. I wanted to buy right out of school,
Yeah.
right out of residency. And I think that was definitely ego driven. It was like, I see myself as bright, as a go getter, as someone who's known they wanted to be an owner for years now. And like, this is going to show that I'm ahead of the curve and I'm going to be the first one in my class to be an owner. And that was all ego, like all of it.
Yeah.
And it ended up not working out just because I couldn't find one that I liked in that time, which led me to the associate job, which I'm so glad I did, getting that private practice experience. Because yes, it made a lot of things easier clinically when I got the office. And, I was able to stretch myself in a lot of different procedures that, it's tough to say, but like I knew it wasn't going to be there for a lot of years. So like, I'm going to try things that are, a little outside my comfort zone and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't do that if you're the owner. Like you can, but it's a lot more sticky. So I am super glad that happened. But yeah, I'm with you. I would challenge anyone who is really committed to that. What is the reason you're so committed to that? Dentistry, we have a long career. Like it's okay. Like we got a lot of time. Like I fall into this all the time, but you got to remind yourself, like, listen, this is like year 1 of 30, or something. Like, let's just like relax.
Right.
It's okay. Let's have lives. Let's have fun.
Yeah.
And you're going to get there soon. It's going to happen. And last point on this, you're going to be able to buy a bigger office if you wait. If you are 6 months out of school, residency or something, you can get a bigger office, which is going to get you more money, which is going to give you more freedom. Like that's more important than you becoming owner right away.
Yeah. That honestly, that last point is like so poignant because that's kind of what really made it click for me is, I had been thinking that there was this marginal benefit in me being an owner right out of school as opposed to being an associate for some time. And I was going to be able to make so much more money and I was going to have all these things ready for me. But, what's the marginal benefit of being able to finance a larger practice? Even if that means you're an associate for like, 6 months to a year.
I mean, huge.
It's massive. And that has repercussions, for the rest of your career, which, as you said, could be like 30 years. There's no way that time you saved in getting to ownership is actually going to have more of a return than affording yourself an even larger opportunity and being more clinically competent. So that's kind of where I sort of shifted focus. And, I'm still all about getting into ownership, but I have to get into the right form of ownership. I'm not just going to do it just to say I did it. And sort of letting go of that ego trip was like a really, really huge transition for me.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, it's free. It's, it's not, it's like an external thing influences the internal. Like it wasn't internal, it started somewhere else. So, and it also leads up the opportunity of being able to be an associate, then buy the office you're in, which is a great path for many reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that especially if you find something off market, is really going to be more common anyway. It's going to be a hard sell for, someone that wasn't already thinking of selling their practice to then be converted to, I'm going to sell my practice and leave immediately. A lot of times there is going to be sort of a transitional period, a reverse associateship or, something like that. Where
just please get the timeline in writing.
Yeah.
Please. I can't take it. Like, that's the worst. I deal with friends who go through this and I'm like, one guy literally lost like 4 years of his career because he was waiting for the owner to be ready to sell, and then he just wasn't.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah. So no handshake agreements, right?
No handshake agreement. This isn't the 1970s. Okay, we write things on pen and paper.
Okay. Well, that's good. Well, Matt, that's pretty much all I have for today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Tyler, I appreciate you having me on. I think I'm going to be on a lot more, so I hope
so.
I hope the audience has been enjoying this episode because we're going to do some more, kind of foreshadowing maybe something coming in the summer. We'll just leave it at that.
Maybe. I'm actually really excited for that. As much as I like being on with George, I think that you and I's clinical philosophy and sort of the way we want to practice align a little bit more. I do want to be the man myself,
Mm.
but I also think that the ways in which we think of being the man are pretty similar. And
Mhm.
I frankly I don't know if I'm ever going to be a lazy dentist. We'll figure it out. But I really hope that the audience sees the same value in having you on as I do. It's really a huge pleasure, and hope to have you on again soon.
Wow, thanks, Tyler. That was really nice. Yeah, it was fun, and let's do this again soon.
All right. I appreciate everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, be sure to write a message to Matt directly. He really loves getting as much feedback as he can, and he's very quick to respond. So
Very.
thanks, everybody, and you'll be hearing from us soon.